Today we'll be starting a new subject that is Bible geography. Today we'll do the introduction and I'll distribute the notes from tomorrow as it is not yet printed today. Listen carefully to the introductory part of this Bible geography. It is very important and very interesting. Today, before we distribute the notes, let us have an overview of the biblical lens. In this whiteboard, I have written a sketch, a rough sketch of the world map of the Middle East. If you have seen this is the Mediterranean Sea. A very famous sea found in the Bible, Mediterranean Sea. And below this Mediterranean Sea, on the bottom of this Mediterranean Sea, lies Egypt, the great land of Egypt. And Nile River will flow here. Nile River, the river Nile. And this will be the delta. Delta means where the rivers reach the sea. And about this Egypt, this also including Egypt. And here lies the nation of Israel. This is Israel. It's a very small country, but a very significant one. So after this, above this Israel lies Lebanon. It's a country where Hezbollah terrorists are being stationed in Lebanon. And above Lebanon will be Turkey. This Turkey in biblical times it is called Asia Minor. So here lies the nation of Turkey, modern Turkey. In the book of Revelation it is called Asia, or we call it Asia Minor. And above Israel, or just behind Israel, lies the nation of Syria. This is Syria. And just beside Israel lies the country Jordan. This is the modern map, okay? This lies Jordan. And beyond Jordan is the great Arabian Bazaar. The great Saudi Arabia was here. Saudi Arabia. A very big country, mostly comprised of bazaars. And this is Iraq. And just on the southern side, on the eastern side of Iraq lies Kuwait. You may heard about the Iraq War or Kuwait. Because of this Kuwait country, there is a great war, Iraq War, with the Americans. And beyond this Iraq lies the great nation of Iran. This Iran, the top of the days. There is a war between Iran and America or Israel states. The Gulf of Gomar, this one, where Iran doesn't allow the vessels carrying oil to pass through. The Strait of Gomar. And in biblical times, Egypt is the same as this Egypt. In biblical times, the map of Israel is sometimes smaller, sometimes bigger. In the times of Solomon, the boundary of Israel is the biggest, to say. All this Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and some parts of it, Turkey, also included in the boundary under the jurisdiction of Israel under Solomon. But in modern times, the nation of Israel, which was created, which was withdrawn after its independence in 1947, not this size also. Here will be Gaza Strip will be here. And also in the middle, a big portion of this is Palestine occupied again. And the nation of Israel, the state of Israel, is very small, comparatively small, compared to all other countries, all neighboring countries. So now, in this first lesson, what I want to describe, though Israel may be a very small country, though Israel may be a very small state, this is the Gulf of Suez. Okay, this is the Gulf of Suez. Gulf of Suez is here. So this is the Gulf of Suez, this is the Mediterranean Sea. So Ferdinand had built a canal here, which is called the Suez Canal. Suez Canal was built here. A small stream or a small river may run here, and it was widened into a big canal where big ships could pass through. Because of this building of the Gulf, the Suez Canal, so to say, those big vessels or big ships could pass from Mediterranean Sea to the other ocean, to the Indian Ocean, so to say, crossing this canal. That shortened distance by hundreds and thousands of kilometers because of this Suez Canal. And here are the Suez of Gaba, this one. And in biblical times, all this portion of Iraq, including Kuwait, this is called Mesopotamia. The ancient names of Iraq is Mesopotamia. And since the city of Babylon is situated somewhere here, Babylon, the state of Iraq or Mesopotamia itself is called Babylon. And why this Iraq or Mesopotamia is important? The reason is a very famous river or two great rivers passes through this Iraq or this Mesopotamia. And those two may be called Euphrates and Tigris. It's called Euphrates. The river Euphrates, which is mentioned in the Bible, Euphrates or Tigris. The other name is Tigris. Two major rivers passes through this Mesopotamia. Tigris, Euphrates. And remember, sometimes this Iraq or this Mesopotamia is called Babylon, because the city of Babylon was there. And this modern Iran, it was previously called Persia. Okay, Persia. Persia. Or some this part is called Median. And also this part, all this part combined together, sometimes it is called Assyria. Assyria. A-S-S-Y-R-I-A. Assyria. So, remember this part. Modern Iran was previously called Persia or Assyria, and this western part is called Median. And after the time of Nebuchadnezzar, after the time of the Babylonian rule, it is called Medo-Persia. Okay, Medo-Persia. The combination of Medo-Persia, Median plus Persia, is called Assyria. This Medo-Persia becomes Assyria. And the combination of all these is now called Iran. So, the Bible had mentioned all this country, okay? The Bible had mentioned about Syria. The Bible had mentioned about Lebanon. And though the state of Jordan was newly created, but not during the time of the Bible. During the time of the Bible, all this eastern part of Israel is called Moab, Edom. Okay. This Moab, Edom, falling to different names. And this Jordan, this is the Jordan River. Maybe because of this Jordan River, this country, all the eastern part of the Jordan River, may become the country Jordan. Moab, Edom, Elam, into different names, okay? During the biblical days, during the biblical times. So, this Turkey, it was not previously called Turkey, but one famous place to remember is Mount Ararat. Mount Ararat lies somewhere here, okay? Mount Ararat, where Noah had rested. Ararat was in Turkey. And the importance of this Mesopotamia, or the importance of this Iraq, is the locations of Eden. The locations of Eden may be somewhere in this region. Because the four rivers, Pison, Gihon, Hiddekel, and Euphrates, passes through these places. So the possible location of Eden, the Garden of Eden, where God put the garden, is in modern Iraq. So these are the biblical words. And in lesson 3, 4, we will be coming across the journey of Abraham. The journey of Abraham. The story of the Bible mainly starts with Abraham, isn't it? So where will Abraham comes from? Abraham is the progenitor of Israel, you can say. He is the father of the nations, especially the nations of Israel. So Ur may be situated somewhere here, okay, near Babylon. Ur, the city of Ur, may be situated somewhere around here, before the city of Babylon was established. So if that means Abraham may come out, God called Abraham from this Ur Namu, or Ur, and Haran, maybe somewhere here, Haran. From Ur to Haran, and from Haran, Abraham came down to Israel. Okay, Israel. And from Israel, he traveled to Egypt. He traveled to Egypt. And you know the story of Abraham. Since there is a great famine, in Israel, Abraham came from Ur to Haran to Israel. He traveled to Egypt and came and go back to Israel. When he was in Israel, so the same, Isaac and Jacob, his grandson Jacob, was also already born while he's in Israel. And Jacob, during the time of Jacob, you know the story. Jacob had 12 sons. Because of the great famine in Israel. And this may be after Joseph was being sold out to Egypt. During that time, for search of grain, the sons of Jacob went to Egypt. And since Joseph was already there in Egypt, they stayed somewhere in this Egypt. In the Bible, we have seen the name Goshen. Okay, Goshen, maybe somewhere here, Goshen. Goshen, which is a very fertile land, which is good for grazing of animals. So Joseph, who is more or less the prime minister of Egypt during those days, had given a land to his siblings, to his brethren. So Joseph and his relatives, or the sons of Jacob, including Jacob himself, resides in this Goshen. It's near the delta, the mouth of the river Nile. And since this is a very fertile land, they became very prosperous in rearing cattle. And they were being multiplied. their population grew in such a large number that even the king of Egypt, the pharaohs, even feared that Israel may overpower them. So a great persecution starts. A great persecution starts in Egypt. Because the new Pharaoh did not recognize the contribution of Joseph, the contribution of the Israelites in building up the Egyptian nations. So because of the great persecution, Moses came up into the scene, isn't it? Moses. You know the story? Moses, from a child, was being reared up in the palace of Pharaoh, and when being grown up, he became, God called him to be a great leader of Israel, and God sent Moses to free the Israelites from the bondage of Egypt. And from that time, see this one, under the leadership of Moses, the Israelites came out of Egypt. God does not allow Israelites to go through the common route. This is Egypt, and Ramesses may be somewhere here. Ramesses. Their starting point was called Ramesses. And from Ramesses, if they are to travel to Israel, this is the shortest route, okay? The routes are in the sea coast. This is the sea coast. This is the Mediterranean Sea, and a plain area where many routes already existed. But God does not allow the Israelites to go in the shortcut, in the highway. God does not allow the Israelites to pass through, to go through this highway. This will take very few days to reach Israel, for the very reason that the pharaohs, the army of the Egyptians, may chase them. And there are many Egyptian army on the way, on the highway. They will block them. The unarmed Israelites, consisting of women, children, the elderly, will not be able to fight those army in this shortcut routes. So for that, God leads the Israelites through Moses in this desert area, and somewhere they cross the Red Sea. Okay, the Red Sea will be somewhere here. This is called the Red Sea in modern days. But the Israelites may not cross this very big sea at those days. But it is possible that the extension of the Red Sea, where the Suez Canal has been built, maybe someplace here, which the Israelites had crossed. And they had traveled through the desert in the Sinai Peninsula, okay, in the Sinai Peninsula, and Sinai maybe somewhere here, okay, some Sinai. And from this, they had, because of their disobedience, because of their murmuring, because of their complaint, they are supposed to reach in 40 days. Even through this rugged terrain, even through these routes, they are supposed to reach Israel in 40 days, okay, 40 days. But because of their disobedience, God changed that 40 days into 40 years. So instead of reaching the 40 days, they had drowned. In order to reach this place, they went through a circle. They had circled this place for 40 years. And only after wandering in the desert for 40 years, they finally entered the promised land. That is about the rule of Exodus. We'll be getting that lessons in lessons 3. So here I just want to show roughly the possible routes. From Egypt, the Israelites six lakhs mature men, excluding female and child. Altogether, they may be more than 2 million, isn't it? After taking the 10 Commandments from Mount Sinai, they had wandering for 40 years in the desert, in the wilderness, what to say. And after the wandering of 40 years, they entered the promised land. Moses had already died, and under the leadership of Joshua, they conquered Canaan. This Israel was not called Israel in the beginning, okay? During the times of Abraham, it was not Israel. Israel was just a name after Jacob, okay? It was called Canaan, the land of milk and honey, Canaan. It was called Canaan. It was previously called Canaan, okay? All this Israel was previously called Canaan. Canaan is the promised land. But in order the Israelites to occupy the land of Canaan, they had to drive out all the inhabitants of Canaan. So under the leadership of Joshua, all the inhabitants of Canaan, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, the Amalekites. There are many nations, dozens of nations already resides in this Canaan, in this land of Canaan. So under the leadership of Joshua, with the help of God, they were able to drive out all the inhabitants of Canaan. And the Israelites had occupied all their territory. So, the 12 tribes of Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel, could occupy the land of Canaan. And from that point onwards, and from that day onwards, it can be called Israel. Again, they became the nations of Israel. And you learn from the Bible, the first great kings of Israel is Saul. Before Saul, before God governed the Israelites with a king, the Israelites governed themselves with judges. You know the period of judges. for 400 years, for around 400 years, God had governed the nation of Israel through judges, starting from somewhere. So after the period of judges comes the kings, the monarch. The monarchy rule starts with Saul, King Saul, isn't it? King Saul was the first king of Israel. And after Saul, David became a king. And after David, his son Solomon. After Solomon, these small nations of Israel was divided into two. Divided into two kingdoms. Southern kingdom, northern kingdom and southern kingdom. The son of Solomon, because of the disobedience of Solomon, so to say, since God is not pleased with Solomon in his later days, his kingdoms, the nations of Israel was divided into two. Southern kingdom, northern kingdom. The sons of Solomon, Rehoboam, could rule only over two tribes. Judah and Benjamin was ruled by the son of Solomon. And the other 10 nations of Israel was ruled by Solomon general, army general, Jeroboam. So the nation of Israel was divided into two parts, northern kingdom, southern kingdom. And because of the transgression, because of their sins, God had punished them. God had punished the Israelites in such a way that they were being carried out into bondage. During those days, now the importance of these nations come into the scene. In order to punish the nations that disobedience Israel, God had used other nations, other big nations. God raised other big nations, ungodly nations, so to say, into power to rule over the world. Before the nations of Babylon, the great nations of the great empire of Babylon was established, Assyria were the ruling nations of the world, were the superpower of the world. So during the times of Assyria, the king of Assyria, when you talk about Assyria, their capital was Nineveh. Okay, Nineveh was their capital. Nineveh was their capital. You had the city of Nineveh in the story of Jonah. So the Assyrian kings had conquered all this fertile land of Mesopotamia. The Assyrian king had conquered all these lands, even came down to Israel. The Assyrian king conquered all this northern Israel, and they take away all the strong men into slavery. into their country. They have conquered all this northern Israel and took them into captivity and took them captives. And because of that, the 10 tribes of Israel, okay, the 10 tribes of Israel, who was being taken captive by the Assyrians, now become the lost tribes of Israel. They do not return back to Israel anymore. They did not return back to Israel for that reason. All those Israel taken away, brought out by the Assyrians, do not return back to Israel, their nation Israel, so they became the lost tribes of Israel. And in the later days, Babylon rose into power after Assyria. Okay. Babylon rose into power. When Babylon became the world power, okay, when Babylon had increased their, when Babylon had widened their territory, they had conquered all the Middle East, the Babylonian. Especially during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, they had conquered all this Middle East. They had control over. They had overpowered all the kings of this Middle East. And the Babylonian even came down to southern Israel and took captive of the kings. So you know the story of Daniel, Sadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You know the prophets Ezekiel. Those Ezekiel, Daniel are all being taken into captivity by the Babylonians. Okay. So those two nations, those two remaining nations of Judah and Benjamin are also taken into captives by these Babylonians. So even those 10 tribes already vanished away. Isn't it? All those 10 nations are already gone into Assyrian slavery. Those two remaining nations, Judah and Benjamin, are also taken into captive by the Babylons. So in this Babylon, in this place, the Israelites, so to say, the Jews, or the nations of Judah, the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, under Jehoiakim, or under, what so to say, we can just say the most renowned Daniel. For 70 years, they are being held captive by the Babylonians. After 70 years of captivity, under the leadership of Nehemiah, under the leadership of Ezra, and especially Nehemiah, they returned back to Jerusalem to rebuild Jerusalem after 70 years of captivity. And so, though not most of them, many do not return, many stay in Babylon. All those who return from Babylonian captivity to Israel, they make up the nations of Israel. Again, under the leadership of Ezra and Nehemiah, the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the rebuilding of the temple took place. And all those who are not returning back from Babylonian captivity or from Assyrian captivity became a refugee in all these foreign lands. So for that very reasons, the Jews are being scattered all over the world. Okay? Why the Jews are being scattered in every country of the world? Because they are being taken into captivity by Assyrians, Babylonians. And after hundreds of years, it is not possible for them to return back to Israel. So they reside in whichever country they like. And that comes into the story of Esther, the queen. Esther and his parents, her parents already died during the captivity, and he was looked after by his uncle Mordecai. Okay, and this Mordecai is serving in the Assyrian under Assyrian king, and from that after Vashti was being thrown out to be the queen, Esther was being selected from the beauty pageant, from the beauty contest, so to say. And when Esther was being selected to be the queen, Esther became the queen of Assyria. And then in the time, Assyria is called Persia, isn't it? Persia. She became the queen of Persia. This Medo and Persia became one nations, and during time this Persia is more popular. So the Persian king Ahasuerus became, when Ahasuerus was the king of Persia, Esther became the queen of this Persia. This Persian empire is very big, very big. They dominate over 127 countries, isn't it? So Esther was the queen over hundreds of countries, including India. Even India was governed, ruled over by the Persians during the time of Esther. So that the biblical importance of Persia, modern Iran. Came into light. So this modern Iran was previously Persia was called Persia. Okay, and this Iran was mentioned in the Bible many times. The Assyrian kings, the Persian kings. So it has the city of Nineveh was mentioned. So this modern states of Iran was very important in the biblical times too. That we have to remember. And for the last, I want to stress on the importance of this Israel. This Israel, the state of Israel, is just like a tiny speck of land, a tiny patch of land in the world map. Even in the Middle map, even the Middle East map, Israel was a very small country. Okay, but Israel was very important. Israel had a very strategic locations. It is also sometimes called the center of the earth. This small state of Israel is sometimes called the center of the earth. Why? Why this Israel is very important? And since ancient days, and since the times of Abraham, a great battles, a great war was always fought in the state of Israel. One example I will tell you. during the time of Abraham and Lot. Okay. During the time of Abraham, Lot was taken into captivity by the Mesopotamian kings. Okay. Those 4 kings from Mesopotamia, 4 kings from Babylon, from this Mesopotamia, came and conquered Israel. And they took into captivity all those Sodom and Gomorrah kings. Okay, Sodom kings, they had taken into captivity. And Lot was also included among the captives. When Abraham learned that Lot, his brother's son, was taken into captivity, Abraham trying to rescue Lot with his 318 well-trained commandos, so to say. Abraham had a private army, okay? A private security. Very well-trained, 318 men. In these modern days, we can call 318 commandos. The kings of Sodom, the kings of Gomorrah, could not withstand the kings of Mesopotamia. But remember, only the private army of Abraham could overcome those Mesopotamian kings, and those Abraham private army could dominate over the Mesopotamian kings, and they had taken back all the captives of Sodom, and they brought back to their places. So that story will learn in the book of Genesis. So what I want to mention here is not the detailed story, but this Israel became a battleground even during the times of Abraham. That is what I want to stress out here. And during the time of Judges also, when the Israelites sins against God, God had raised their neighboring kings, and those neighboring kings conquered their land and take them to captivity. When Israel had repented, God raised judges among them, like Deborah, a woman judge. And the judge saved Israel from the conquering nations. They brought back all the captives into their land again. You know, during the time of Samson, Gaza, okay. Samson died in this Gaza. Samson died in Gaza. So, during the times of Samson, these Philistines are the enemies of Israel. The Philistines are the enemies of Israel. Samson had killed many of the Philistines, isn't it? In his last breath, in his last days, in his last day, he had killed many of the kings of Philistines. And these Philistines are more or less the same as the Palestine of these modern days. So even during the time of Samson, a great war was there in Gaza, isn't it? Gaza, Philistine and Israel are at war, constant war even during those days. So even during this time, the Hamas, who had conquered this Gaza Strip, which is Hamas are always at war with Israel even these days, isn't it? 3,000 years back, there was already a war started between Gaza people and the Philistines and the Israelites. So this continued even these days. And the Palestinian occupied territory was in the middle of this Israel. So a fight already always took place even during these days. And this Lebanon, it was previously under Israel. Now in these days, this Israel neighbor, the Syria, the Lebanon, are being controlled by Hezbollah militants. So they are all constantly at war, even to these days. Now this Iran is at war in Israel again. So even in the times of Israel, even during the kings of Israel, there was a war between Syria and Israel, Babylon and Israel, Syria and Israel, Philistines and Israel. Even the Egypt also conquered this Canaan. There was a war between Egypt and Israel. So it's a great battleground. So these small nations of Israel always became a battlefield, isn't it? These small nations of Israel. These very small nations of Israel became a constant. So, why is there a constant war in this land, in this small land of Israel? The reason is because of its very important locations. The nation of Israel, the land of Israel is a very important place. And it even says the most important place in the world. For the very reason that here is the Red Sea is here, Mediterranean Sea is here, and this is the Caspian Sea here, and all these sides are not possible to travel. So, the only possible way to connect with the other parts of the world is through Israel. People cannot cross this Arabian Desert, okay? For example, this Iran, these Kuwait people or these Babylon people, if they are to go to Egypt, if they are going to Egypt, in order to go to Egypt or in order to go to Africa, the only possible routes is this routes through Israel only. It is possible only to go through Israel. The reason is that they could not cross the Arabian Desert. No one can travel in the Arabian Desert. Even if they can come to the Arabian Desert, there is a gulf, a great gulf, which is impossible to cross. The Red Sea is there, impossible to cross. So the only possibility is that all those Middle East, all those nations of Middle East, if they want to go to Africa, they have to come to Israel. So it became Israel is the gateway between the Middle East, or the gateway between Asia and Africa. Even during these days, if we are to build a railroad, even if we are to build a land road, a road to go to Africa, the best possible route is through this Israel. If you look at the map, that is the only possible routes. So because of this strategic location also, the small nations of Israel is very important. If you want to conquer, if the Middle East want to conquer Egypt, they have to come through this Israel. Without passing through Israel, they cannot go to Egypt. So the Assyrians, in order to control Egypt, they first have to dominate this roadway, all this land. They have to put all the kings of Israel under their control in order to go through their land, pass through their land. So Assyrians had worried about Egyptian. The Babylonians had worried Egyptian, and all those wars are being fought in this place. Because Egyptian came up, Assyrian came down, Babylon came down, and the battlefield was always somewhere here in the nations, in the country of Israel. So we heard about Armageddon, okay? That Megiddo, the small valley here is called the Valley of Megiddo, and this is a very good place for a battlefield. So many kings, many battles have been fought in this Megiddo. So in the New Testament times, this Megiddo, which we call Armageddon, became a symbol of war between good and evil. So this morning, I'm just giving you a brief sketch about what we are going to study in Bible geography. If you are well acquainted with Bible geography, you will be acquainted with world history. Because the Bible mentioned all this land, the description of the land are clearly mentioned in the Bible. That will add to your knowledge, and this will be very good for your general knowledge as well. So the following classes will be very interesting for you. I want you to be very attentive and regular in the class. Otherwise, if you miss one class, you'll be missing a great lessons. So for today, let us get part of the class here.